Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2021 and welcome to your practice report here in Imola for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Now, if you're new to the channel and have no clue what the practice report is, in today's video we'll be going through both of today's hour-long practice sessions FP1 and FP2, breaking down today's results, looking at the times, who's looking quick for qualifying runs, and more importantly, who's looking spicy for the all-important race on Sunday. All of the dramas, all of the crashes, all of the events from today's practice session will be discussed. So as always, if you are new, feel free to subscribe, but we'll start off today's report by taking a look at your times. And in the morning, for FP1, it was the two Mercedes out on top with Valtteri Bottas for the first time in 2021 leading a session, a 1:16.5, the best lap the Finnish driver could do, just beating Lewis Hamilton by 0.04 of a second, beating Verstappen's Red Bull of 0.05 of a second. So close at the top of the standings, but dramas throughout. We'll talk about that in a moment's time once we have got through all of our times. The Ferrari of Charles Leclerc was P4, 0.2 of Bottas's time. The Ferraris were split by Pierre Gasly's AlphaTauri. Both of those teams looking pretty awesome in that midfield pack this weekend. Sainz was P6, the fellow Spaniard Fernando Alonso again looking like he's got the edge over his teammate in the early stages of the weekend. He was 7th in FP1. Stroll, Latifi and Daniel Ricciardo rounded out your top 10. Note on Latifi, he's looking quick this weekend. Keep an eye out for him, especially in qualifying on Saturday. The bottom half of your field in FP1 started with George Russell, Williams looking better, maybe a brighter horizon coming their way for this weekend's points. Unlikely is what I would say at this moment in time, but FP1, pretty good for them. Kimi Raikkonen was P12, the lead Alfa Romeo in P12, 1.3 of Bottas's best time, and only 16 laps completed for Formula 1's most experienced driver. But considering he's the most experienced driver, he's already done a lap or two around this circuit in his time in Formula 1. Lando Norris, a difficult morning session, only 16 laps for him, down in P13. Vettel continued his struggles in P14. Giovinazzi was 15th. And then, we have those two arch rivals, the two arch enemies, Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez, not only 16th and 17th, making contact, crashing into each other, but sadly, we've not seen any footage. Many technical issues this morning from FP1. We don't really know what happened between these two. However, listening to the teams, more importantly, listening to the drivers and the press releases that followed this morning's session, it seems as if Ocon was on a slower run, kind of a long run pace, but nothing too crazy. No quick laps in there, just making sure everything was working. Checo Perez, on the other hand, very different story. Ocon tried to get out of the way, little bit of miscommunication between the two drivers, and as we discussed yesterday in the preview, this circuit is so narrow. Any sort of little mistake or misjudgment can have huge effects, huge consequences, and that's exactly what happened for both of them. Both of them out on the spot, no more laps completed for either of them in FP1, but 15 and 20 respectively isn't too bad considering what happened. Mazepin was P18, Schumacher 19 and Yuki Tsunoda P20. Only 11 laps for the Japanese driver. He found himself in the gravel halfway through the session, but Nikita Mazepin, we've got to talk about him from FP1. So many spins, spun instantaneously at the start of the session, found himself in the wall at the end of the session. A day to forget for the Russian driver. And in FP2, before we jump into our full breakdown of today's two practice sessions, once again, Valtteri Bottas leading the way. And if you thought it was close last time, Hamilton in FP2 just 100th away from his teammate, with Pierre Gasly's AlphaTauri only 700th away from the Mercedes man, but Bottas's best time on the medium tyres compared to everyone else inside that top 10 on the soft. Does that mean Bottas is going to run away with this one? I don't think so. We'll go through the running order as well in a moment's time. The predicted running order not AWS, do not worry, my own predicted running order, and I still think Red Bull are in control of this one, but so far so good for Bottas and Mercedes. It was the two Ferraris in 4th and 5th, Charles Leclerc finding the barriers at the end of FP2, but a solid day of running. That car really does look quick. Perez, the lead Red Bull in FP2 in P6, with Yuki Tsunoda making it inside the top 10 in P7. Norris, Giovinazzi and Lance Stroll your top 10. After his crash in FP1, Ocon was able to get going again in FP2. He finished 11th, 2 places in front of teammate Alonso, with Latifi once again putting in a mega lap, splitting the two Alpine cars, 1.2 seconds of Valtteri Bottas' best time. Also, 29 laps completed for Latifi, 31 for George Russell. A really solid day across the board for the Williams team. Verstappen, P14, lots to talk about. 5 laps completed, a gearbox failure, and in a season where Red Bull are very much aiming for championship glory, mistakes like this really can't afford to happen. If this is the only gearbox failure across the season, it's not too bad it was in a practice session. But so early on in the season, while you're trying to build momentum, not ideal for the start of the weekend. I mentioned it earlier, I still think Red Bull are the team to beat, but if these issues continue to happen, I will become slightly worried. It's been a trend for a while now with reliability, especially with Honda, but more so with the Red Bull team up against Mercedes. It's just another twist to the tail in our 2021 season, and we've barely even got going. P15 was Sebastian Vettel, continuing once again his struggles getting used to that Aston Martin car, with George Russell in 16th place. Raikkonen 17th, a big surprise Daniel Ricciardo in P18, his best lap time though on the medium tyres. That could explain why he's quite far off the pace of his teammate. Schumacher 19th, and Nikita Mazepin, again spinning in FP2, finished dead last in P20. And with our times out of the way, my predicted running order for this weekend looks a little bit like this. Red Bull, I've got at the top. Now, their best time in FP2 was 0.860 off the best time of Valtteri Bottas' Mercedes. That was Perez, with Verstappen having his own issues. Both drivers, in essence, missed a session each, which isn't ideal heading into what is the second race of the season so far, and it does highlight the teething issues of a start of the season. Verstappen very much comes into this weekend knowing last time out was a missed opportunity. He's going to hope that missing today's session, FP2, isn't going to cause him that many issues heading into tomorrow's qualifying. I don't think it will. We all know how good Max Verstappen is. We didn't race here that long ago in cars that are very similar to last season's. He'll be fine. He'll not only want to make up from last weekend, but also from last season here in Imola, on for a P2 before that rear puncher / failure near the end of the Grand Prix. I think he's got a great chance of winning this weekend. Sergio Perez, a driver with a few more question marks. He'll be frustrated with the incident in FP1 because he needs running in this car. And FP2, the times don't look great, but I think what was more important for Sergio was getting those laps in, continuing to get used to that car. Long runs look good in FP2. Qualifying pace he wasn't really able to do, so that's still a bit of an enigma how he's going to fit in, but I expect him to be in Q3. I expect him to be challenging for those front 2 rows of the grid. Mercedes doing what they do best today. Very little issues, a couple of wide moments, but nothing too crazy for either driver. Hamilton, a little bit behind Bottas, a tiny little bit behind Bottas in both sessions, but that's exactly what they needed. No issues, plain running, getting data for that car, trying to understand how they can beat the beast that is Red Bull of this year. Expect them once again to be challenging for the victory this weekend. Then we get to that midfield, and I do think AlphaTauri, Ferrari and McLaren are going to be our next 3 teams. Gasly's got a point to prove after last weekend. Tsunoda had a slight off in FP1, but apart from that, again, very smooth running. A similar story at Ferrari. Sainz, quiet day, getting on with some laps. Long runs look good, qualifying runs looked even better, and I think we could see a scenario with Ferrari maybe lining up 5th and 6th, but maybe dropping back behind the AlphaTauri of Gasly, maybe even a McLaren during the race, similar to what we saw in Bahrain, to be totally honest with you. And McLaren will be there or thereabouts right with them. They could be 4th or 5th, on the grid 6th as well, and in the race they're going to be causing problems, they're going to be causing headaches, and I think of all of those teams in the midfield today, they were the ones that kept the cards closest to their chest. Nothing too flashy in qualifying runs, Ricciardo doing his running on the medium tyres in FP2, so they could spring a surprise over the course of this weekend. Alpine, updates today, contact for Ocon, not ideal, but Fernando Alonso once again having no issues, looking like he's jumping back in like a duck to water, his old Nando in Formula 1, but the car looks better, which either means the upgrades are working, which fingers crossed they are for Alpine, but it also might signify that their car is used to cooler temperatures and slower circuits. In Bahrain, we're used to very high-speed corners, long corners as well. Not so much on Imola. And though in Bahrain we have 3 DRS zones, could even be 4, at Imola we just have 1. So it could be track dependent, but Alpine looking better heading into this weekend. But Aston Martin, once again, seem to be struggling, taking all the headlines of their high-rate car not suiting the new regulations, and that does seem to be true. They really do seem to be the team that have been hit the most by these regulations, and I think what really highlights that most is that Aston Martin last year, named Racing Points, were fighting for podiums, got a pole position, now they're in the mix with Alfa Romeo, that only scored 8 points last year. I think that really highlights their fall from grace. Stroll looks fine so far this weekend, but once again Vettel, it's just practice. I don't want to read too much into it, but doesn't quite seem to be fully up to grips with this car just yet. But give him time. It's only his second race weekend with a brand new car, a brand new team, a brand new concept of car as well. Give him time, folks. Give him time. But that car not looking all singing and all dancing just yet in the season. Alfa Romeo look good. Look very much to be in the mix with Aston and Alpine. Williams look closer this time out. And once again, Haas kind of in a world of their own. Great running from Mick Schumacher today. No issues at all. No spinning. Happy days. Lots of spinning for his teammate Mazepin, finding the barriers at the end of FP1, spinning at the start of FP1, a spin in FP2. Says it's like driving on ice in that car. Also went straight on at the chicane at the top of the hill at the start of Sector 3. That car really looks hard to drive. They did add a couple of updates for this weekend onto that car. They will be the final updates on that car for the season. It's not looking good for the American team. And with that all out of the way, it's time to take a look at your predictions for this weekend's race. Yesterday, I gave you this grid and wanted to know in qualifying your pole position, front row, and your biggest shock from qualifying and in the race. Your winner, your podium, first DNF, best overtake, and the greatest of honours, driver of the day. And your 2 winners for this weekend, 2 very sensible winners actually for once. First up we have Spaghetti W, smiley face, who's gone with Bottas for pole position, his first of 2021, Mercedes first of 2021. It will be Max Verstappen who joins him on the front row, and the biggest shot from qualifying. This one is mega, considering we had not seen practice when this prediction came in. Latifi, P15, also beating George Russell. I would have said you were bonkers before practice, but Latifi looking so good in FP1 and 2. And in the race, Sergio Perez will take his first podium, his first victory for Red Bull. Ricciardo and Bottas, 2 and 3. You expect carnage when you see a podium like that. Hamilton, the first DNF, maybe contact with Verstappen considering he's missing from the podium. Tsunoda overtakes Gasly for overtake of the day, and Antonio Giovinazzi at his first home Grand Prix of the season, driver of the day. And your second winner, once again going for Red Bull glory this weekend, Citrus has gone for a 1-2 for Red Bull in qualifying with Tsunoda P5, the biggest shock. And in the race, Verstappen will be victorious for the first time this season. Hamilton and Perez rounds out the podium. Poor old Fernando Alonso will be the first DNF. The greatest overtake, and I do love this one, Verstappen on Hamilton, fighting for the lead, maybe on split strategies as well. Oh, that would just be so good. And driver of the day, Pierre Gasly. And that is it from me for your practice report here in Imola for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. I'll be back tomorrow for your qualifying report, and on Sunday I'll be with you for your race review, also race reaction over on the F1 Word. But as always, if you are new, feel free to subscribe. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.